You have some, before we get to the team, you have a little bit of intel on Jeffrey Lurie.
Well, yeah. So I had Ruben Frank, who's a longtime columnist, host, been covering the Eagles since 1987 on my Slammed podcast yesterday, just to get some feeling from somebody who's been with the Eagles before, or covering the Eagles before and after Jeffrey Lurie bought that team in 1994, and just kind of trying to figure out, what is this guy like as an owner? Because, of course, Bill Simmons earlier this week had the report that he's in the bidding for the Celtics, and that was a real surprise name for a lot of people. What's interesting to me is everybody knows this guy now is a Boston sports fan. He grew up around here, went to high school in Cambridge, went to 3 different schools.
To Babson and
Brandeis, BU, and Clark University.
Okay.
And so
grew up in Newton, or did he start
Chestnut Hill?
Okay, yeah, Chestnut Hill.
So I don't know if that's Newton or Brookline. I feel like we always get
go back and forth,
trapped in geography. But so he's a huge Boston fan. So I guess from that perspective, it's not surprising. He tried to buy the Patriots once before, back in '93, and was basically talked out of it by a family member. But the guy's 77 years old. And from a Philadelphia perspective, what I got was, this is someone who people thought was maybe handing over the reins for the Eagles to his son, Julian. And so it's kind of a surprise that, hey, now there's interest over in the Celtics, which is clearly a franchise that this guy has been a fan of growing up around here and being a rabid New England fan like everybody else. But what does that mean? Does that mean maybe Julian would take over the Eagles and now Lurie is in charge of the Celtics? Does that mean that they all wrap into this one portfolio? Does that mean that this guy, who apparently Jeffrey Lurie is a very active owner with the Eagles, not meddling, but very, he puts in a ton of face time, kind of like Robert Kraft.
For 77, by the way. He doesn't look like he's 77 years old.
It's that rich stuff.
I feel like he would at least, he's not a carpetbagger in the carpetbagger sense like a Bezos is a carpetbagger. Like,
I don't even know what a carpetbagger is.
Well, somebody who moves, it's like a politician term where you move into a city or a state so you can win an election there and you don't know anything. It's like Mayor Wu.
Long way to get there. I'm not teaching that.
No disrespect.
Yep.
But he cares about Boston sports, clearly,
Absolutely.
which would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think the feeling is, especially over the last decade, Eagles fans and the media seem to respect him a lot. This is an owner who maybe in his early days was a little more hands-on and learned on the job that you don't want to be an owner whose hands are in organizational functions and everything. But now he's moved beyond that. And so I think my personal opinion is that he's a good option for the Celtics.
But if
Julian
it goes
to that.
Is his son. Like, that's basically saying, okay, Robert Kraft is going to buy the Knicks.
He's a little younger than Robert.
Right, but I'm just saying, eventually Jonathan will be the owner. So if you want to look at the Celtics' future, okay, is Julian the right fit for this? And that worries me.
So Ruben Frank, who I spoke to, said that Julian has been hands-on with the Eagles since 2021. Obviously, they've had a ton of success over the last 5 years. So that hasn't had any bad impacts on the Eagles. And I think, to me, the big takeaway that I had from this conversation was, this is a very shrewd businessman and somebody who moves with a ton of intentionality. So I don't think that this is a person who just threw a bid in there because he's a Celtics fan and he's like, oh, the team's for sale, $6 billion. Let me see what I can get there. This guy sold off 8% of his shares in December in the Eagles because he wanted to put together a plan to bid. We think, from the report from Bill Simmons, that's what it looks like. And I think we know Pags is in the running. This would be another option that seems like it would, at least on its face, be a good outcome for Celtics fans.
So those are the only 2 bidders that we know about. Is it surprising to you that more hasn't leaked on who the finalists are?
It's not surprising. Lurie also still hasn't confirmed whether he's in it or not. Yeah. So this is all just kind of background information. He hasn't said he's not in it. So that leads me to believe that he probably is one of the bidders. It doesn't surprise me. I think it'll trickle out. There was some indication that the Celtics expect to close on this first part of the deal sometime in spring. So I would guess over the next 6 weeks, we start getting a little more information here or there. Oh, this person has a bid in, that person has a bid in, this person's not included.
Is there any concern that he maybe cut some meat off the bone with the Celtics because of all the not owning an arena, the luxury tax, and, we've heard the Dakota rumor, which is that they might move on from Jaylen Brown, or he could be a guy that they could potentially move on from after the season.
Wiggy, he apparently has a house on the Vineyard. Maybe he'll have to sell that in order to afford the Celtics.
Well, no, is there any concern with that? Because, he might, does he go down that road because he has a, other business, but he owns another franchise.
Right. I think for anybody who's going into buying this team, and it's someone like Lurie, someone like Pags, who they're no matter, even if they're going in individually, they're going to have backers behind them in order to meet that $6 billion price tag. I think it's kind of hard to not see that as a hurdle, right? Like I don't really see one option of somebody coming in and not surveying the entire landscape and saying, this is a crazy roster. Like, how long are we keeping this together? How many championships are we getting out of that? I don't think that that's going to be dependent on just one particular buyer. The arena stuff is really interesting to me because Lurie bought the Eagles in '94, and then several years later, they open up Lincoln Financial Field. And the Eagles had played at Veterans Stadium from '71 on before that. And so I don't know exactly if that indicates that they would be interested in building an arena for the Celtics, but I do feel like for an outside buyer who isn't a Jeff Bezos or something like that and they want their return on investment, that seems like it might be part of the plan.
Not just because it was a Courtney bomb, but did the story this week about the Fenway Sports Group dumping some equity in the Penguins indicate to you at all that they may be in this and we don't know about it?
Again, I think that it's a little different, in my opinion, because you have reporters on the Red Sox beat, in the MLB beat, saying we're getting indications. We have sources within the league who are saying that FSG is not involved. Now, I don't know if that means a group connected to FSG that's not FSG. I mean, you can get really particular about this kind of stuff and then turn it around in a month when something comes out. So I don't know about that. Again, I do think it's indicative that Lurie dumps 8% of his shares in the Eagles in December and then emerges as a reported bidder a couple weeks later. So
I wouldn't have John Henry doing this.
So I wouldn't say that it's completely unfounded,
All right, settle a debate that we had on the show this week. Is Ime a better coach than Joe Mazzulla currently?
Oh, I feel bad. This makes me feel bad. I will say I have gotten negative feedback from listeners in the past for how much respect I have for what Ime Udoka does on the court. I think that he is a fantastic motivator. He really connects with his players. You see that in the Houston game. I was at that game the other night covering it, and it's from the jump. Now, you had the Celtics down 3 players in that game, but from the jump, somebody goes down, the entire Houston bench is over there helping that guy up. That team has so much energy right now. They are rolling through the NBA. To me, that's kind of indicative of an Ime team. In the second halves of these schedules, he gets his team so revved up that they just gain this momentum until the playoffs. And I think that's something that the Celtics could use a little bit of a shot in the arm right now.
I guess you could say Mazzulla on a different team may not be as great of a coach.
You know what? I got to stick up for Wiggy because when I was driving in, I think Curtis was gaslighting Wiggy a little bit.
Yeah, there you go. And I don't even know
Curtis
what
is a
gaslighting means.
gaslighter. He's
I think
a big
Curtis
gaslighter.
was gaslighting Wiggy a little bit, and I felt for Wiggy because I could hear Wiggy feeling like he was a crazy person, saying I was the
percentages
one who was
were kind of off.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, Curtis believes that if the New Orleans Saints would have drafted Brady at 200, he'd still be the GOAT.
Well, the
Wiggy's like,
Patriots
I
were
was
the
there,
Saints,
I played
Wiggs.
with Brady, and
No, no.
Curtis was like, I know.
They were the Saints. The
Yep.
biggest difference is they had Belichick as their coach.
Right, and who was Belichick before Brady came in? The guy that was about to get fired again.
Yeah, he was. But here's what I would
stick
say.
with the NBA for 1 second, Wiggy.
I'm
The
go- that's what
NBA.
I'm
You
at, the
said
NBA.
you
No,
said
I wanna-
you said that Mazzulla is the best coach in the NBA.
Yes,
he
I still-
inherited a team that Ime
Right.
built, and yet you make this different argument with Brady. It's very interesting.
I don't think Ime built that team. I think that was a team that was built by Brad Stevens.
Yeah, and Brad Stevens made the team better for Joe Mazzulla.
Right.
Yeah, I think. But here's the difference. Ime had a similar team, got to the finals and lost. Mazzulla
lost in the conference final.
Had a similar team, got to the finals and won. The difference is with Houston, if you watch Houston play, I think what Ime does a great job of, and I gave Ime credit, a lot of credit for here, is getting guys to buy into his role. And if you look at the Houston Rockets, they are a young team without, a bunch of superstars other than Jalen Green, and everybody buys into that role. You got guys like Dylan Brooks. You got guys like Amen Thompson. These guys, Steven Adams. They know what their roles are. Fred VanVleet. They know what their roles are, and he does a really good job with those type of players, where when you get a team that has an alpha in Jaylen Brown, an alpha in Jason Tatum, a guy that was a unicorn in Kristaps Porzingis, Drew Holiday, who was a tremendous player in Milwaukee, you now have to manage egos of guys that have already kind of made it to the mountaintop. It's a lot more difficult to do that than when you're dealing with younger players.
I agree, and they're just at different points where Ime Udoka, we've seen him be a coach who can, again, transform these teams in the second half of the season, make them these defensively elite teams, and they're all rolling together, and they all believe in the cause. But defending a championship is the hardest thing to do in the NBA.
Right.
And so if Joe Mazzulla is able to get this team back to the finals and they're able to beat whoever's there, then I think he deserves way more respect on his name than we're giving to Ime Udoka, because that's just a bigger challenge. But I do think Ime, now you see what he did with the Celtics, you see what he's doing with the Rockets. He has a certain stamp that he puts on his teams, and you can identify right away what kind of team that is.
Do you think Jimmy Butler ends up with the Warriors?
Oh, my God. I didn't know we were going to get this version of Jimmy Butler back. When Jimmy Butler, blew his way out of Minnesota, then was in Philly, then he ended up in Miami, and he was doing his little coffee commercials, and he was doing all the emo costumes on media day. It's like the vibes are so good for Jimmy. Chaotic Jimmy is back.
He is back.
So I have no idea where he's going to end up.
He's Bulls Jimmy. He's the original Jimmy.
Yeah, he's probably going to end up in the West. If he's with the Warriors, I don't really think that's relevant to the Celtics. I don't. I look at one team in the West as a serious threat for the Celtics, and that's Oklahoma City.
And I think he lands in Phoenix, because I know Phoenix wants to get rid of Bradley Beal, so maybe he lands over there. It'll be interesting, but I still, I've said this all the time, Mego, is I don't see a team in the East or the West 7-game series beating the Celtics 4 games. I just don't see it.
I think you need to see Oklahoma City again, and maybe you'll be able to put together 4 total quarters, and then we can have that conversation about that team in the West. But in the East, I agree. I think if you end up with 7 games against the Cavs, it's going to be tight. It could go 7 games, but you're okay.
All right, condolences on your Commanders.
Oh, I know. You know what? I feel so grateful. It was crazy being able to see a team in the conference championship that you haven't seen there for 33 years, and the future is so bright for Jaden Daniels. He was trying to do everything in that game, and obviously the roster just wasn't to that level for that game.
You agree with those who suggest he had the greatest rookie season by a quarterback
Absolutely.
ever?
Well, I don't know about ever, but certainly in the modern NFL. When you look at the quarterbacks who have gone to the conference championship as rookies since 2005, all those guys, respectfully, because a couple of them turned out to be awesome, all those guys were passengers. Jaden was the only one who was driving the bus for his team.
Yeah, I'd agree with you.
You look at the stats, they totally back it up. 4 quarterback comebacks by him in the regular season. Postseason obviously backs it up. And so, yeah, I think he's the greatest rookie quarterback ever.
Is he a baby girl?
I don't know.
I bet he is.
I haven't met him.
I bet he is.
I don't get this baby girl thing.
I bet he is.
Guys,
can I tease something as well?
Oh, yes.
Mego and I will have an event coming up pretty shortly, a little Galentine's Day event.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah.
Galentine.
So stay tuned.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is it just...
That's all I'm going to say right
just
now.
for the ladies.
Valentine's Day is the day before Valentine's Day.
Oh, right.
Is every year.
Is it just for the ladies, or can the baby girls come?
I think I'm always welcoming the baby girls.
Oh, I thought Galentine meant strictly for the women.
It's for the women. But I mean...
Is it
I'm
like
not discriminating.
Are you doing painting and like wine painting?
You'll have to wait and see.
Okay.
No.
So,
I can say no.
you say no to that.
No.
All right.
I don't
Do you
do
win
that.
your way in, or I know you don't want to say anything about it, but it's coming up.
It's coming up.
Oh,
Okay.
what
All
a
right.
tease.
The two of you. All right.
Yeah.
Awesome.
There you
Mego,
go.
great to see you. Thanks for coming.
Nice. You too, guys.